I am Jenny Mahine from BSTCM 1B Group 7, and our topic is all about the Renaissance art. Objectives: to define Renaissance art, to determine the characteristic of Renaissance art, and to determine the most distinguished artists during the Renaissance period, and lastly, to determine the most distinguished artworks during the Renaissance period. And the topics we discuss is A. Definition of Renaissance art, B. Characteristic of Renaissance art, and C. Distinguished artists in the Renaissance period, and last D. Distinguished artworks in the Renaissance period. Introduction. The Renaissance, a cultural and intellectual movement that began in Italy during the 14th century and spread throughout Europe by the 16th century, heralded a dramatic transformation in the arts. This period, which means rebirth, was marked by a renewed interest in the classical tradition of ancient Greece and Rome, inspiring a revolution in painting, sculpture, and architecture. So, Renaissance, this period, which means rebirth, marked by a renewed interest in the classical tradition, inspiring a revolution in painting, sculpture, and architecture. So now let's discuss the painting. So in painting, artists like Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael pioneered new techniques such as perspective, chiaroscuro, and sfumato, creating more realistic and human-centered works emphasizing deep light and emotion. So, human-centered works emphasize deep light and emotion. So, this is the example of the artwork. So, as you can see, this artwork emphasizing deep light and emotion. And now let's proceed to sculpture. Sculpture flourished with figures that captured human beauty and anatomy, as seen in Donatello's and Michelangelo's masterpiece, such as David and Pieta, highlighting the mastery of form and the human figure. So this is the example. So this example is captured human beauty and anatomy. So as you can see, meron na captured man dyan niya. And now let's proceed to the last. In architecture, the Renaissance embraced classical elements like columns, arcs, and domes, with groundbreaking works such as Brunelleschi's dome for the Florence Cathedral and Bramante's design for St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, reflecting a harmonious blend of function and beauty. So, this is the example of Brunelleschi's dome. So, overall, the Renaissance redefined the role of the artist and laid the foundation for modern Western art. So, redefine the role of the artist. So, sa Tagalog pa redefined is muling tinukoy. So, muling tinukoy ang papel ng mga artist. So, that is the redefine. So, that's the overall of the introduction of the Renaissance. Characteristic of Renaissance art. Here are the key characteristics of Renaissance art, which is the fish, park, fore, and cloud. But I only discussed the fish and the park. So fish is the focus on the human body, and I for the idealization of the human form, and S for symmetry and proportion, and lastly is the humanism, which is the H. So now let's discuss first the focus on the human body. So, focus on the human body, emphasis on the human figure, often depicted in dynamic poses with a high degree of anatomical accuracy. For example, is the Michelangelo's artwork such as the David or Davide in Italian pronunciation. And now let's go to idealization of the human form. Figures were often idealized or made to represent perfect beauty and harmony inspired by classical ideals. And as for symmetry and proportion, Classical concepts of harmony and balance were integral to the design of both visual composition and architecture. And lastly, the humanism, a focus on the human experience, celebrating the individual and an interest in classical antiquity, which is the example is the Greek and Roman culture and the philosophy, and last is the methodology. The next is the part, the PARC. So now, PARC is portraiture, architectural innovation, religious and mythological themes, and lastly is the chiaroscuro. So now let's go to portraiture first. So portraiture arise in the popularity of portrait painting, often with a focus on individuality, personality, and status. For example, is the Leonardo's artwork, such as Mona Lisa painting. And next is the architectural innovation. A return to classical forms such as columns, domes, and arcs, as well as the development of new architectural techniques. For example, is the Brunellesque dome for Florence Cathedral. And the third one is the religious and mythological themes. While religion remained a major subject, artists began to depict classical methodology and secular subjects more frequently. And the lastly is the chiaroscuro, the contrast between light and dark to create volume and depth in the paintings and sculpture. So the chiaroscuro is used to contrast between light and the dark. So in summary, the first question is, what does Renaissance art mean? So Renaissance art mean is a period of artistic revival or rebirth and innovation from the 14th to the 17th century, focusing on the revival of classical ideals and emphasizing realism, humanism, and the accurate depiction of the human figure and nature. So that's the Renaissance art means. So Renaissance is revival or rebirth. So what are the four distinct phases of the Renaissance period? So first is the early Renaissance, and the second is high Renaissance, the third one is late Renaissance, and the fourth one is northern Renaissance. So that's the four distinct phases of the Renaissance period. And number 3, what are the characteristics of Renaissance art? So mo to siya, the fish, park, for, and Claude. So unsa ganitong fish? So fish is focus on the human body and the idealization of the human form and symmetry and proportion and humanism. So that's the fish, the FISH. And the park is the portraiture, architectural innovation, religious and mythological themes, and the chiaroscuro. So that's the park. And the the four rather, so the FUR is focused on individual artists, use of oil paint, and realism and naturalism. So that's the 4. And the Claude is color and texture, linear perspective and depiction of light, then use of space. So that's the Claude, color and texture, linear perspective, depiction of light, and use of space. So that's the characteristic of Renaissance. So now let's go to question number 4. Who are the distinguished artists or holy trinity of the Renaissance period? So, kinsa man to sila nga mga tao. So first si Raphael, and second one is si Michelangelo, and the third one is si Leonardo da Vinci, and etc. And the last question, What are the most distinguished artworks of Renaissance art? So mga kuan na ni siya. Most distinguished nga mga art nga mga kanang gipagawa sa bitaw kanang grabe ka mga common art nga atong nabalaan dyan. So the first is the Last Supper, and second is School of Athens, and the last is the Creation of Adam. I hope nga kabalo mo, and yeah, you know ani nga mga artworks, cause yeah, it's amazing. Minimalism art. Minimalism is a design or style in which the fewest and most basic elements are used to get the greatest effect. Minimalism has its roots in the arts, with artwork containing basic lines, a limited palette of hues, and careful application of those lines and shapes. It is all about possessing only what leads meaning and significance to your existence and the lives of those you care about. Minimalism art is a movement emphasizing simplicity, clarity, and reduction of elements to fundamental essential, and that is minimalism art. Here are some iconic examples of minimalist art. Painting by Ellsworth Kelly, sculpture by Donald Judd, photography by Ansel Adams, installation and performance by Marina Abramovic, architecture by Tado Ando, digital by Ryoji Ikeda. According to Honor 2009, the point of the minimalism is to emphasize that it is not the artist's expression, but the medium and material of the work, or it is reality. Frank Stella, a minimalist painter, once stated, "All I want anyone to get out of my paintings is the fact that you can see the whole idea without any confusion. What you see is what you see." And this is the Frank Stella artwork example. And this is the primary structures held at the Jewish Museum, New York in 1966. Works of Donald Judd, Carl Andre, Dan Flavin, Saul Lewitt, Robert Morris, and Tony Smith. Main points. Minimalism is mostly about reducing the unneeded, and it emphasizes simplicity, efficiency, and refinement. In regards to making the most of the fewer distractions, it was all about less is more, and minimalists oppose the idea that art should reflect the personal expression of its creator, rather advance the principle of eliminating all sense of the artist's role in the work, leaving only the medium for viewers to contemplate in its absence of narrative and content beyond the medium itself, means consciously encouraging the things we value much and eradicating everything that holds us back.